Assalamualaikum and good afternoon. So I am Dimacangan Hasniba and the first reporter of Group 6. So we're going to tackle about the Lesson 6, the learners with intellectual disabilities. So at the end of this module, the learner should be able to describe intellectual disability, including its characteristics, causes, and types, discuss appropriate educational approaches to address the special needs of the learners, and show understanding and a positive attitude toward learners with intellectual disabilities. So learners with intellectual disabilities are individuals who have limitations in intellectual functioning and adaptive behavior. So compared to those other individuals, normal individuals, learners with intellectual disabilities na may limitation yung thinking and learning nila. So these challenges affect their learning, communication, and daily living skills, and they acquire proper support to help them develop and succeed. So that's why they need extra support from people around them. First, let's discuss intellectual disabilities. So, intellectual disabilities mainly affects a person's thinking, kagaya ng sinabi ko, and learning, daily living skills, communication, and social behavior. So, it is caused by problems in brain development, not necessarily in physical problems or appearance. So, in other words, intellectual disabilities is not just about the physical appearance of a person. So, individuals with intellectual disabilities just don't affect their brain, but also it affects their daily living skills. So, for instance, they have difficulty doing tasks alone, so they need guidance from their parents or their caregivers. And in terms naman in communication skills na, they might find it hard to express their thoughts and what's in their brain, and they might also find it hard to understand what other people is trying to say. And in terms of social behavior naman na, they might find it hard to be friends with other people and socializing with other people. So now let's move on to adaptive behavior. So it refers to the range of cognitive, social, and functional abilities that individuals acquire and demonstrate in their daily activities. So adaptive behavior refers to the skills that they use in their daily life for them to function independently out and interact properly with other people. So there are three main types of adaptive behavior. So the first one is cognitive abilities. So cognitive abilities is related to the thinking and learning. So it includes like counting, understanding numbers, solving simple problems, and following instructions. So a very good example for cognitive abilities is when a child learns how to count 1 up to 20 and knows the difference between less than and greater than. And the second one is social abilities. So it involves on how a person interacts with other people. So a very good example for this also is when a child politely asks to borrow a pencil instead of just taking it. And the third one is functional abilities. So these are the everyday skills that help a person take care of themselves. So a very good example for this is when an individuals know how to pack their own school bag and how to put their coat on their own without a guidance from someone. So now let's move on to functional curriculum. So functional curriculum is a curriculum that prioritizes the acquisition of abilities that are applied in everyday tasks across various domains, inclusive domestic, community, recreation, vocational, and core areas. So functional curriculum is a type of curriculum that focuses on teaching skills that students can use in their daily life. So instead of focusing only on academic subjects, it prioritizes the abilities that will help individuals to become independent and function well in their society. So it covers different areas of life such as domestic skills, community skills, recreation skills, vocational skills, and core skills applied in real life. So a very good example for domestic skills is when an individual learns how to cook, clean the room, and do laundry. And for community skills naman na, it is when a learner practices how to ask for direction and how to use public transportation. And for recreational skills naman na, it is when students know how to participate in games and do some hobbies like drawing or music. And for vocational skills naman na, it is when a learner is trained how to do some simple job tasks like organizing items and packaging foods. So now let's move on to independent life skills. So independent life skills, also known as life skills or daily living skills, refer to the fundamental skills required to survive in today's society. So these are the basic abilities that a person needs to live and function well on their own everyday life. So these skills can include like taking care of personal needs, managing time, handling money, communicating with others, and solving simple problems. So the main goal of developing independent life skill is to help individual live safely, independently, and successfully go on with everyday life. So now let's move on to self-regulation. So self-regulation refers to a set of capabilities and skills that enable an individual to adapt their emotions, actions, and thoughts in order to meet different needs. So self-regulation will help individuals respond appropriately instead of lashing out and uh, and instead of reacting impulsively. So a very good example of self-regulation is when a student feels angry, but instead of being mad or shouting, they chooses to calm down. So another example for this also is when a child waits for their turn instead of interrupting others. So self-regulation plays a very big role in schools and in daily life. So especially in following rules, handling challenges, and completing tasks. So now let's move on to the uh, classified causes of intellectual disability based on its biological origin and environmental causes. So for biological or genetic causes, it refers to how the genes of the parents of the individual who has an intellectual disability influence the genetic or chromosomal composition. So usually, nangyayari to before pa ipanganak yung baby and naapektuhan na yung uh, brain ng baby that will lead to intellectual disability. So it is not caused by something a person did, but rather by the genetic or chromosomal makeup they were born with. So usually din nangyayari to kapag may missing or extra or change chromosome. So which can influence a person's learning, thinking, and development that will lead to intellectual disabilities. So for the environmental causes naman it refers to the nurture aspect, which entails that the individual develop its intellectual disability based on the physical and social environment. So compared to genetic causes, these environmental causes is hindi ito na-inherit sa parents, but it is caused by their or influenced by their physical and social environment. So this may include lack of proper nutrition, exposure to harmful substance, limited nutrition, stimulation, or unsafe living conditions. So these causes can happen at different stages of life. So the first one is prenatal, so before birth. So when a mother, kapag yung mother is hindi nakakakain ng proper nutrition and masyadong exposed sa alcohol or drugs, then it will affect the baby's brain development before kahit nasa tiyan pa lang sila. And the next one is perinatal, so during birth. So pwedeng while nanganganak yung mother is there will be a lack of oxygen during delivery or complication during birth that will affect the baby's brain. And for the postnatal naman, after birth, kapag naipanganak na yung baby, it is when a child who experiences severe malnutrition, neglect, or lack of proper learning opportunity may have delayed development. So these are the common chromosomal disorders. So the first one is Down syndrome and the Fragile X syndrome and Prader-Willi syndrome and Williams syndrome. And we're going to discuss that one by one. First one is Down syndrome. So it is where individuals with the disorder carry an additional essential segment of chromosome 21 in certain or all of their cells. So it alters the progression of fetal development and leads to the specific traits linked to the condition. So Down syndrome is a genetic condition where a person is born with an extra copy of chromosome, and that extra chromosome is what affects the body and the brain development of the individual. So because of this, individuals with Down syndrome have delayed in learning, thinking, and physical development. So if mapapansin natin kung sino din yung nakakita ng mga may Down syndrome is kung mapapansin natin is magkakapareho lang sila ng physical feature. May similarities sila. So Down syndrome is also called trisomy 21 because of the extra chromosome. So individuals with Down syndrome can go to school like other people, but they need extra support and guidance from people around them. So let's move on to Fragile X syndrome or FXS. So it is referred to Martin-Bell syndrome. It is the result of either a permutation or a full mutation of the fMRI gene. So FXS is responsible for a group of illnesses related with FXS, which leads to a higher prevalence of intellectual disabilities in males compared to females. So FXS is mas common siya sa mga lalaki compared to mga babae. So it is caused by a problem or mutation in a gene called fMR1 gene. So FXS is also called as Martin-Bell syndrome. So it is one of the most common inherited causes of intellectual disabilities. So ayun nga yung sinabi ko, males are usually affected than females. So some common physical feature nila, kung makikita nyo sa picture, is long face, large ears, and malaki yung noo nila. So let's move on to Prader-Willi syndrome, or PWS. So it is a rare type of chromosomal abnormality with typical features. So one notable feature of PWS is the individual's persistent fixation on food and the strong urge to eat constantly. So this kind of chromosomal abnormality is So PWS is caused by a problem in chromosome 15. So individuals with PWS often have difficulty controlling their appetite. So kapag kumakain sila, na much better na may guidance ng parents or caregiver nila, kasi kapag sila lang yung pinapabayaan kumain, is na overeating sila because they have this strong urge to eat and eat. Kahit kakakain lang nila, is hihingi na naman sila ng makakain nila. So they are overweight. So learners with PWS, they have the difficulty to do physical activities like running, jumping, or lifting objects. So they find that hard to do. So PWS is considered a rare condition, and one of its main features is constant hunger. Yung sinabi ko na kain sila ng kain, also called as hyperphagia. And during their infancy then is they have low muscle tone, and it can also lead to obesity if their food intake is not controlled. So now let's move on to Williams syndrome. So it is a rare condition that impacts 1 in every 25,000 live births. So this is linked to abnormalities in the structure of the face, as well as issues with the kidneys and heart. So Williams syndrome is caused by a small missing piece of chromosome 7. So also individuals with Williams syndrome often have a unique facial features. So fun fact about individuals who have Williams syndrome is they are very friendly and sociable. So they enjoy interacting with others and may have strong communication skills compared to other areas of learning. So they have difficulty in doing math or problem solving, but they can do well in speaking and storytelling. That's why they are very sociable. Also, individuals with Williams syndrome is ayaw nila yung maiingay. Ayaw nila ng mga sirens or musics. And they also need regular checkups because of heart conditions.
So good afternoon again, ma'am and everyone. Hopefully you guys understood this part. And if there are any questions, you may ask later. Let me first proceed with the characteristics of an individual with intellectual disability. First will be the general cognition. So learners with an intellectual disability, they generally process information more slowly kaysa sa mga peers nila or mga ka-age nila. They may also take longer to understand instructions at kailangan pa na ulit-ulitin sa kanila yon. The memory kasi, especially in working memory nila, is very weak, which affects how they retain the lessons. And because of that, they also struggle to apply kung ano man yung mga natutunan nila from one situation to another. And it affects their independent learning. The next characteristic is their learning and memory. It includes lower acquisition of skills, difficulty retaining information, and struggles transferring learning. So this one is just like general cognition. Just like what I've said kanina, learners with intellectual disability need repetitive instruction. Because even after learning something, they may still forget it easily, or may still fail to use it in new situation. For example, yung student mo, he may know or learn how to solve a math problem sa klase but may not apply it in real-life situations. Like they cannot successfully or properly buy items in a store. The third characteristic is their attention. So for intellectually disabled learners, they really struggle when it comes to understanding information, especially yung mga new information. With their attention span, the issue is not always lack of attention. It may be because they cannot process ano ba yung information and why is it important. And because of this, as the educator or future educator, we have to adjust our instructions or our lessons may need to be broken down into smaller ones and i-deliver natin to at a slower pace. So the fourth one is their adaptive skills. It includes conceptual skills, social skills, and practical skills. When we say adaptive skills, it refers to the daily living abilities, and its key domains are what I have just said: conceptual, practical, and social. So conceptual skills include language, reading, writing, counting, and telling time. Social skills includes following rules, interacting appropriately, and resolving conflicts. Practical skills, on the other hand, involve dressing, hygiene, preparing food, and managing daily routines. Many learners with intellectual disabilities struggle in these areas, which affects independence, kaya kailangan nila ng guidance by their caregivers, parents, or mga peers nila. So the fifth characteristic is their self-regulation. It includes difficulty controlling emotions, impulsive behavior, and aggression or frustration. Self-regulation means managing emotions and behavior. So learners with intellectual disability may struggle with emotional control. Mabilis silang ma-frustrate or most of the times they react impulsively. Itong mga behaviors nila, they are often connected to their cognitive limitations at hindi nila sinasadyang mag-misbehave. Another characteristic is their speech and language. For learners with intellectual disability, language development is often delayed. Hindi yun dahil sa they don't know how to use it. It is just delayed. These learners may often have difficulty sa pag-form ng sentences, pag-understand ng mga instructions, or even just follow conversation rules, like taking turns. Di nila maintindihan kung kailan sila mag-start magsalita, and mostly nagsasalita sila kung kailan lang nila gusto, which causes for the other person to get interrupted. This affects their academic and social participation. And the seventh characteristic is their motivation. Mostly sa mga learners with intellectual disability, nakaka-experience sila ng paulit-ulit na failure, especially sa academics, so they may develop learned helplessness. Or iniisip na lang nila na wala na silang magagawa sa kung ano man yung kalalabasan kasi yun na yun. This means they may expect to fail even before trying. They may also rely too much on others for answers, which is called outer-directedness, or they need the approval of others before doing or saying something. As an educator, if we ever observe sa students natin na may mga ganito silang behavior, we must provide encouragement and the achievable task para ma-build yung confidence nila. Next one is their academic achievement. So for learners with intellectual disabilities, their cognitive skills or ability has limitations, which affects their reading comprehension, problem solving, and abstract thinking. So learners with ID may struggle to plan, to think critically, and to understand complex ideas. And the last characteristic is their physical features. Physical features does not limit to their obvious difference in face lang. It also pertains to physical motor or orthopedic problems, such as getting tired easily, difficulty walking or running, difficulty in writing or holding pencils, or poor postures or scoliosis. Now we are done with the characteristics of an individual with intellectual disability. We may now proceed with the identification and assessment. Paano nga ba natin ma-identify yung mga students na may intellectual disability at what are the assessment we must use? First one we have is intelligence testing. In the past, IQ alone determined diagnosis. However, according to AAIDD, or American Association on Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities in 2010, IQ should not be the only measure. To properly diagnose, it requires evaluating cognitive ability together with the learner's adaptive behavior and academic functioning. Common tests include Stanford Binet Intelligence Scale or SB5. It is a test that measures a person's overall intelligence or IQ. This test helps identify a child's strengths and weaknesses in thinking skills and is often used to help diagnose intellectual disability or giftedness. Wechsler Intelligence Scale for Children or WISC-5, on the other hand, is an intelligence test specifically made for children ages 6 to 16 years old. This test helps teachers and psychologists understand how a child learns and what kind of educational support they need. The next assessment is adaptive behavior assessment. It includes the three domains: conceptual, social, and practical. Adaptive behavior assessment measures how well a person functions in daily life. Tools we use to determine are Diagnostic Adaptive Behavior Scale, or DABS, which is a test used to measure how well a person can handle everyday life skills compared to others their age. It focuses on adaptive behavior, especially in communication, talking and understanding others, social skills or getting along with people, and daily living skills or self-care like eating, dressing, and hygiene. It is mainly used to help diagnose intellectual disability by checking if a person has difficulty in daily functioning, not just in academic skills. Another tool is the Vineland Adaptive Behavior Scale, which is a test that measures how well a person can function in real-life everyday situations. It is often answered by parents, teachers, or caregivers and looks at communication skills, social interaction skills, daily living skills like bathing, cooking, dressing, and motor skills like movement and coordination. This test helps professionals understand a person's independence level and what kind of support they need in daily life and in school. And the last one is the Academic Skills Assessment. It includes reading, math, writing, and oral language. Academic assessments help identify strengths and weaknesses in school performance. Common tools include Kaufman Test of Educational Achievement or KTEA3, which is a test that measures a student's academic skills in school. It checks how well a learner can read words and understand stories, spell words correctly, do math problems, and write sentences. It helps teachers know a student's strengths and weaknesses in learning subjects. Second academic tool assessment is Wechsler Individual Achievement Test or WIAT3, which is another test that measures academic achievement in children and adults. It is used to find out if a learner needs special education support or learning help. And the last one is Woodcock-Johnson for Test of Achievement, which is a detailed test that measures many areas of academic learning ability. It is often used to diagnose learning difficulties and to plan the right teaching strategies. These tests help teachers plan proper interventions.
We're going to talk about educational approaches and curriculum models. When teaching learners with disabilities, hindi pwedeng one style fits all na lang. Because every learner is different. May iba, mabilis, matuto, or they can adapt fast. And some needed guidance. That's why teacher always ask 3 simple questions. Why is it important? Or bakit ito mahalaga for students? Teacher choose lessons that are useful in real life, not just for academic. For example, instead of focusing algebra, mas importanteng matutunan ng learner kung paano magbilang ng pera. Second questions that a teacher should ask is, what should the learner will learn? Anong dapat matutunan ng learner? Because it depends on the learner's ability and needs. Some students can handle academics with ease, but other needs to focus on life skills. And third question should be how it should be taught or paano ito itinuturo. Learners with disability often need step-by-step teachings, visual aid, practical in real situations. Kasi hindi effectively yung puro lecture na lang yung kailangan, hands-on at clear guidance. They can't really focus abstract. They need a step-by-step. So in academic curriculum, this focuses on subjects like reading, writing, math, and science. And why is it important for them to have this? It helps learner gain basic knowledge needed in daily life, like reading, science, or understanding the numbers. For example, a student learns math using coins instead of abstract numbers. So natututo siya magbilang and maggamit niya sa pagbili. Because some learners, especially with disabilities, sometimes they can't see. So you cannot expect them to solve an equation. So here are the functional curriculum. This focuses daily living skills. Why is it important? Of course, not all learners will master academics, but all of them needed to live independently. In a scenario where a student practices buying food in a real store, mas natututo siya makipag-usap at magbayad, very useful in real life. And for the systematic instructions, is step-by-step and well-planned. Important, learners with disabilities can get overwhelmed easily. So, kailangan clear at organized ang teaching. In a scenario of where instead of saying to these children, cook food, the teachers breaks it into steps. Get the ingredients, turn on the stove, and then cook. Because you can't expect them outright and then masusunod nila. Kailangan ding maintindihan what is the prompts or the support or the guidance. Prompts are tools to help learner perform tasks correctly. Why is it important? Some learners cannot do tasks independently. At first, they need guidance. The types of prompts: model, teacher shows the task, physicals, hand over hand help, positional, arranging materials, and verbal, giving instructions, gestural, pointing, visual, pictures, or guides. The teacher shows the task. So the teacher will show the task. The teacher is the model. And physical, hand over hand help. Sometimes in our kindergarten, teachers sometimes guide us to write. Instructional, arranging materials. Some materials that are needed or instructional materials that are needed are sometimes in a position where students can grab the lesson instructions. The teacher will give a step-by-step instructions, especially for those people with disabilities. Gestural, pointing. When pinapakanta tayo, especially in kindergarten, sometimes sinasabi ng mga teacher na head, shoulder, knees, and toes. Because some children with disabilities sometimes needed instruction or positioning or the physical contact with the teachers help them to be guided. Visual, pictures or guides, because sometimes students, especially children, are more attached when or more hooked into something na may mga pictures, especially children with disabilities, because when you add more pictures, more entertaining, much nahuhook niya yung mga children. Children is brushing teeth. First, the teacher is the model. The teacher will be the model that guides the children. Then the guide hand, physical. It's the physical. This is where the physical comes. Then it gives reminder. Sometimes when we were grade 2, are sometimes like this. Independent life skills where the students needed, because these are skills needed for everyday living. Examples: using a phone, cooking, managing money, communication. It is necessary talaga for students with disabilities. Why is it important? Ito ang pinaka-important because these are survival skills. An example, a learner orders foods independently in a restaurant. That's already a big step towards independence because they already know how to order. So later on in their independency age, they will no longer dependent on elders. We are here in self-determinations. This means the learner can make decisions and control their own life. It's independency, of course. It includes goal setting, decision making, and dependence. Why is it important? Because learners with disabilities are often dependent on others. But this helps them become more confident and independent. Base instructions. This means learning happens in real world settings. So examples: malls, restaurants, workplace. And why is it important? Because some learners cannot apply classroom learning to real life. They needed actual experience. An experience, because instead of pretending to shop, example, students go to a real grocery stores. It is more effective, mas effective kasi real life situation na. They don't need to play that they are going to groceries because it is taught on them. Natutunan na nila yon. Then evidence-based teachings. These are the proven strategies to make learning more effective. So why is it important? Ensures that teachings works and it ensures that teaching works and learners improve. Steps. The steps. It assess the learner's level, set clear goals, use structured materials, use prompts and fade them, give reinforcement. As I said, prompts, which means help them or guide them, then fade them, meaning, hayaan mo na sila. 5. Give them reinforcement and feedback, practice skills, track progress, because by doing this helps learners improve step by steps. In the conclusion of my report, all these approaches are important because learners especially with disabilities learn in different ways, need more support and structures, required real life skills to function independently, and without this, I guess, without these strategies, they may struggles in daily life, but with proper teaching, they can become independent, confident, and active, and they can be a part of society as normal people with independency, of course. That's all. I hope you learned something new.